My name is Vivian Richards. I'm 50 years old, and I fell in love with the most dangerous man in Seoul. Right now, my hands are shaking as I press this blood-soaked towel against his chest, watching crimson spread across white fabric, and all I can think is, please, not again. Please don't take another person I love. I can't bury anyone else. People ask me if I'm afraid. Living with a man like him. Loving a man like him. And I tell them, I was dead for 20 years. I survived an accident that should have killed me, and then I spent 2 decades wishing it had. Tae Min Hyuk didn't save me. I'm not that kind of story. But he reminded me that I was still here. That my heart still worked. That at 50, with gray in my hair and scars on my soul, I could still fall in love. Is it dangerous? Yes. Is it unconventional? Absolutely. Is it real? God, yes. I lost my first love to tragedy. I found my second love in the darkness. And maybe that's the point, love doesn't follow the rules we set for it. It doesn't care about age or circumstance or whether you've earned it. It just happens. If you're brave enough to let it. My name is Vivian Richards. I'm 50 years old. And I'm finally alive. This is how it happened. But first, before I take you back to where it all began, I want to wish each and every one of you a blessed new year. May this year bring you the courage to love again, to live again, no matter what you've lost. May you find healing in unexpected places and joy in the most unexpected people. It's never too late, my loves. It's never too late to feel alive again. Happy New Year. Now let me tell you my story. The Crimson Lounge sat beneath a high-rise in Gangnam, existing in the dangerous space between legitimate business and something far darker. Vivian had been wiping down the same mahogany bar for 5 years now, her movements efficient and practiced. She arrived every evening at 5:30, hung her coat on the same hook, tied her apron with the same motions, and became invisible. That was the goal. Invisibility meant safety. Invisibility meant no questions about her past, her accent, her sadness. At 50, she had perfected the art of being present without truly being there. Vivian Uni, you look tired today, Youngmi said that Tuesday evening, her young face concerned as she arranged glasses behind the bar. The girl was 23, bright-eyed, still believed the world was mostly good. Vivian envied her that innocence. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just didn't sleep well, Vivian replied in her careful Korean, the accent still thick after all these years in Seoul. Some things refused to be smoothed over, no matter how much time passed. Youngmi nodded but didn't look convinced. You work too hard. You should rest more. Vivian smiled softly. Rest. As if rest would heal what was broken inside her. As if closing her eyes didn't bring back the sound of metal crushing, glass shattering, her own voice screaming for Marcus, for Jeremiah, for little Naomi. No, rest was not her friend. Work was better. Work kept the memories at bay. The lounge began filling around 7. Businessmen in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, the kind of clientele that didn't ask questions and didn't want to be asked any. Vivian moved between them with quiet efficiency, pouring drinks, clearing glasses, existing in the margins of their important lives. She had been doing this for 15 years in Korea, ever since she landed at Incheon Airport with nothing but a suitcase and a desperate need to disappear. The first 10 years had been a blur of different establishments, different faces, until she found herself here, working for a man she rarely saw but whose presence loomed over everything. Tae Min Hyuk. Even his name carried weight in the lounge. Staff spoke it in hushed tones, always with respect, often with fear. Vivian had been working there for 5 years and could count on one hand the number of times she had seen him up close. He was always moving, always surrounded by serious men in dark suits, always exuding an energy that made the air feel thinner. But that night, everything changed. It was nearly midnight when he walked in, and Vivian noticed immediately that something was different. His usual entourage was smaller, and there was tension in the set of his shoulders. Tae Min Hyuk was 35, though his eyes looked older. He wore his power like a well-tailored suit, every movement deliberate, every glance weighted with meaning. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, revealing sharp features that would have been beautiful if they weren't so carefully controlled. He moved through the lounge, and Vivian watched from behind the bar as he stopped beside an elderly server, Mrs. Kong, who was struggling with a heavy tray of bottles. Without a word, Tae Min Hyuk took the tray from her hands and carried it himself to the storage room. Mrs. Kong stood frozen, her eyes filling with tears of gratitude and shock. Vivian's hands paused in their work. She had expected many things from a man with his reputation, but not that. Not gentleness. When he returned, his eyes swept the room and landed on her. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the space. Vivian felt exposed, seen, in a way she hadn't been in years. Then one of his men approached with an urgent whisper, and the moment broke. He disappeared into his private office at the back of the lounge. Vivian exhaled slowly, realizing she had been holding her breath. "Did you see that?" Young-mi whispered excitedly beside her. "He never does things like that. Maybe he's in a good mood." Vivian said nothing, but her mind kept replaying the image of him taking that tray, the care in his movements. It didn't fit with the stories she had heard, the violence that everyone knew existed behind his polished exterior. The rest of the night passed in routine motions until closing time. By 2 in the morning, the last patrons had left, and the staff began their closing duties. Vivian was always the last to leave, finding a strange comfort in the quiet ritual of cleaning. She wiped down the bar top, counted the register, swept the floor. The other staff said their goodnights and filtered out into the Seoul night, until only Vivian remained. She was washing the last of the glasses when she heard footsteps behind her. "You're here late." Vivian turned to find Tae Min Hyuk standing a few feet away, jacket off, tie loosened. He looked tired in a way that made him seem more human, less like the untouchable figure everyone whispered about. "I always close, Mr. Tae," she replied carefully, keeping her voice neutral and respectful. He studied her for a long moment, then moved to sit at the bar. "Whiskey." "Neat." Vivian's hands were steady as she poured, setting the glass in front of him. He took a sip, then looked at her again with those dark, searching eyes. "You've been here 5 years, he said in English, his accent crisp and British educated. "Yes, sir." "You're American." "From the South, if I'm hearing correctly." "Georgia," Vivian confirmed, surprised he had noticed, surprised he cared. "And yet you're here, in Seoul, working in my lounge." It wasn't quite a question, but there was curiosity there. Most people have a story that brings them this far from home. Vivian gripped the counter edge, debating how much to say. "Everyone has a story, Mr. Tae. Mine just happens to be quieter than most." He smiled slightly at that, the first genuine expression she had seen on his face. "You're the only one here who doesn't look at me like I'm about to destroy something." Vivian met his gaze directly. "I've met real monsters, Mr. Tae. You're just a man doing what he thinks he has to do. There's a difference." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in that carefully maintained facade. He finished his whiskey in silence, then stood. "Thank you for the drink, Mrs. Richards." He knew her full name. Of course he did. A man like him would know everything about everyone in his employ. "Good night, Mr. Tae," she said softly. He paused at the doorway to his office, looked back at her once more, then disappeared into the darkness beyond. Vivian finished her closing duties with trembling hands, though she couldn't quite explain why. Something had shifted in those few minutes of conversation, some door had opened that she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through. She had spent 20 years keeping doors closed, keeping her heart locked away where it couldn't be hurt again. But as she walked home through the cold Seoul streets that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at her. Like she was real. Like she mattered. The following weeks brought a subtle change to Vivian's routine. Tae Min Hyuk began appearing more frequently in the lounge, and more often than not, he would request that she personally serve him. At first, it was just drinks, whiskey, always neat, always in the quiet hours after the crowds thinned. Then it became conversations. "Tell me about Georgia," he said one night, his tie loosened, exhaustion evident in the set of his shoulders. Vivian poured his drink, considering. "It's hot. Humid. The summers feel like you're breathing through a wet blanket. You miss it." "I miss who I was there," she answered honestly, surprising herself. "But that person doesn't exist anymore." He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "I know that feeling. Becoming someone new to survive. Over the following weeks, these conversations deepened. He told her about his childhood in pieces, a father who gambled away everything, including his son's freedom. Debts that were paid with a boy's body and labor. The years of crawling through hell to build an empire that could never be taken from him. Vivian listened without judgment, without fear. She had seen too much of life's cruelty to be shocked by his story. Instead, she felt recognition. They were both survivors, both people who had rebuilt themselves from ashes. "Why do you treat your staff so well?" she asked one night, genuinely curious. "I've seen you carry Mrs. Kang's tray. You increased our wages last month without being asked. You make sure we all eat dinner. It doesn't match your reputation." Tae Min Hyuk was quiet for a long moment, staring into his glass. "I know what it's like to be invisible. To be nothing to the people who hold power over you. I swore when I had power, I would never make anyone feel that way." He looked up at her. "And you're not staff to me anymore, Vivian. You haven't been for a while." Her heart stuttered at the use of her first name, at the intimacy in his voice. "What am I then?" "I'm still trying to figure that out," he admitted quietly. Vivian should have pulled back then. Should have re-established boundaries. But something in his honesty, his vulnerability, made her stay. Made her lean closer instead of away. "I lost my family 20 years ago," she found herself saying one night, the words emerging before she could stop them. "Car accident in Atlanta. My husband Marcus was driving. We were going to my sister's house for dinner. It was raining." She paused, her throat tight. "An 18-wheeler jackknifed on the highway. Marcus died on impact. My son Jeremiah was 7. My daughter Naomi was 5. They died in the ambulance before we reached the hospital. I was in the back seat. I woke up 3 days later, alone." Tae Min Hyuk didn't offer empty platitudes or meaningless comfort. He simply reached across the bar and placed his hand over hers. His palm was warm, solid, real. "I'm sorry," he said, and the weight of genuine understanding filled those 2 words. Vivian looked down at their hands, the contrast of his skin against hers, and felt something she hadn't felt in 2 decades. A spark. A possibility. The terrifying prospect of wanting something again. "I was 30, she continued, needing him to understand. "I did therapy for years. They said I had survivor's guilt. That I needed to forgive myself. But how do you forgive yourself for living when your babies didn't?" She looked up at him, tears on her cheeks. "I came to Korea because I needed to be somewhere that didn't know me. Somewhere I could just exist without anyone expecting me to heal or move on or be okay." "And are you?" he asked gently. "Okay." "I was existing," Vivian said. "Just existing. Until recently." "What changed recently?" She looked directly at him. "You started talking to me." The air between them grew heavy with unspoken things. Tae Min Hyuk's thumb traced gentle circles on her hand, and Vivian didn't pull away. "I'm 50 years old," she whispered, needing to say it. "You're 35. I'm an old woman working in a bar, and you're—" "Don't," he interrupted firmly. "Don't diminish yourself. You're the most real person I've met in this city of masks and pretense. Your age means you've survived, you've lived, you've earned every line on your face and every moment of peace you find." His eyes burned with intensity. "I'm drawn to you, Vivian. I don't know what to do with that, but I'm done pretending it isn't happening." Vivian's breath caught. 20 years. 20 years of feeling nothing, of being numb, and now this man was making her feel everything at once. Terror and hope and desire and fear all tangled together in her chest. "This is impossible," she breathed. "Most worthwhile things are," he replied. Before either of them could say more, his phone buzzed urgently. Tae Min Hyuk glanced at it, and his expression hardened instantly. "I have to go. There's a situation." He stood, then hesitated. "Vivian, I—" "Go," she said softly. "Do what you need to do." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on her face as if memorizing it, then he was gone, his men materializing from the shadows to follow him out into the night. Vivian stood alone in the empty lounge, her hand still warm from his touch, her heart racing in her chest. She was 50 years old, and she was falling in love. The realization was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The night everything changed came 2 weeks later. Vivian was leaving for the evening, wrapping her scarf against the cold, when Tae Min Hyuk, second-in-command, a serious man named Jae, burst through the entrance with 3 other men supporting a figure between them. Tae Min Hyuk. Blood soaked through his white shirt, spreading across his shoulder and chest. His face was pale, jaw clenched against pain. "Get the doctor," Jae barked at one of the men. "He's in Busan, won't be back until tomorrow," came the frantic reply. Vivian's nursing instinct, dormant for 20 years, roared to life. Before she could think better of it, she stepped forward. "Bring him to the office. I need hot water, clean towels, alcohol, and whatever first aid supplies you have. Now." Jae's eyes widened. "Mrs. Richards, you shouldn't." "I was a nurse before I came to Korea," Vivian said firmly, her voice carrying authority she hadn't used in decades. "If you want him to live until your doctor arrives, you'll listen to me. Move." They moved. Minutes later, Tae Min Hyuk was laid out on the leather sofa in his office, and Vivian was cutting away his shirt with scissors, her hand steady despite her racing heart. 2 gunshot wounds, one had grazed his ribs, angry and bleeding but not fatal. The other had lodged in his shoulder, and that one was the problem. "Everyone out," Vivian commanded. "Except you," she pointed at Jae. "I need you to hold him down if necessary." "Vivian," Tae Min Hyuk's voice was strained but alert. "You don't have to do this." "Hush," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "I'm not watching another person die if I can help it. Now hold still. This is going to hurt." She worked with focused precision, cleaning the wounds, her fingers probing carefully for the bullet. Tae Min Hyuk's body was rigid with pain, his breathing harsh, but he didn't cry out. Vivian found herself talking to him as she worked, the way she used to talk to frightened patients in the emergency room. "I used to work at Grady Memorial in Atlanta. Trauma center. Saw everything, car accidents, gunshots, stabbings. Learned to keep my hand steady no matter what." She located the bullet, began the delicate work of extraction. "Marcus used to worry about me. Said I took on too much darkness. But I loved helping people. Loved knowing I could make a difference." "Why did you stop?" Tae Min Hyuk asked through gritted teeth. "Because after the accident, I couldn't bear to be in a hospital. Couldn't bear the smell of antiseptic and the sound of monitors beeping. It all brought me back to that night." The bullet came free, and she quickly packed the wound. "But right now, I'm grateful for every hour I spent in that ER. Hold on, almost done." She stitched him with careful precision, then bandaged both wounds. By the time she finished, sweat beaded on her forehead, and Tae Min Hyuk's face was gray with pain. "You need antibiotics," she told Jae. "And he needs to rest. No moving around for at least a few days. The shoulder especially, if he tears those stitches, he could bleed out." Jae nodded, looking at her with new respect. "Thank you, Mrs. Richards." "I'm staying," Vivian said, surprising herself. "Someone needs to monitor him tonight in case fever develops." No one argued. The office cleared, leaving Vivian alone with Tae Min Hyuk. She pulled a chair beside the sofa, dampened a cloth with cool water, and placed it on his forehead. His eyes opened, finding hers. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "We're even then," Vivian replied. "You've been saving mine a little bit every day for weeks now." His hand found hers, gripped it weakly. "I'm going to fall asleep soon. The pain is fading. That's the body's natural response. I'll be here." Vivian. His eyes were intense despite his exhaustion. "I need you to know something. In case I don't wake up." "You're waking up," she interrupted firmly. "In case I don't," he insisted. "You've made me remember what it feels like to be human. To want something beyond power and survival. I'm in love with you. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but it's true." Vivian's breath stopped. Tears filled her eyes. "You're delirious from blood loss. I'm lucid enough to know my own heart." His thumb stroked her hand weakly. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." Then his eyes closed, his breathing deepened, and he drifted into sleep. Vivian sat beside him through the long night, monitoring his pulse, changing the cool cloth on his forehead, and wrestling with her own heart. She was 50 years old. He was 35. He was dangerous. She was broken. It should have been impossible. But as dawn light crept through the windows and Tae Min Hyuk's breathing remained steady and strong, Vivian realized something profound. Love didn't ask permission. It didn't check ages or circumstances or whether you were ready. It simply arrived and demanded to be felt. And she felt it. God help her, she felt it. When Tae Min Hyuk woke around noon, fever-free and eyes clear, the first thing he saw was Vivian asleep in the chair beside him, her hand still holding his. He watched her for a long moment, taking in the gray in her hair, the lines around her eyes, the exhaustion on her face. She was beautiful to him. More beautiful than anything he had ever seen. "Vivian," he whispered. Her eyes opened immediately, alert. "How do you feel?" "Any dizziness?" "Nausea." "Like I've been shot," he said with a slight smile. "But alive. Thanks to you." She checked his bandages, felt his forehead for fever, her touch professional but tender. "You're lucky." A few inches to the left and her voice broke. "Hey," he said softly. "I'm okay." "You made sure of that?" Vivian sank back into the chair, suddenly exhausted. "You told me you loved me last night." "I remember." "You meant it." "Every word." She looked at him, this dangerous man with gentle eyes, this young man who saw her not as a grieving widow or a bar worker but as a woman worth loving. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I buried my heart with my family 20 years ago. I don't know if I know how to do this anymore." "We'll figure it out together," Tae Min Hyuk said. "No rush. No pressure. Just stay. Please stay." Vivian thought of the empty apartment she returned to every night. The silence that greeted her. The 20 years of merely existing. Then she looked at this man who had somehow found her in the darkness and reminded her that her heart still worked. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." The smile that crossed his face was worth every risk, every fear, every complication that lay ahead. Over the following weeks, as Tae Min Hyuk healed, their relationship deepened in ways that surprised them both. He insisted she stop working at the lounge immediately. "I'm not keeping you as an employee," he said firmly. "I'm asking you to be in my life. Really in it. That means no more bartending, no more late nights serving drinks." "I need to work," Vivian protested. "I've worked my whole life." "Then work on something you love. Garden. Cook. Paint. Whatever brings you joy. But you're done working for survival. Let me give you that. Please." It was the please that undid her. This powerful man who commanded an empire asking her permission to care for her. He brought her to his home, a beautiful residence in Hanam-dong with a garden that took her breath away. "This is yours now too," he told her. "All of it." Vivian walked through rooms filled with light, so different from her dark studio apartment. She touched furniture, looked out windows at the city below, and felt tears streaming down her face. "Hey," Tae Min Hyuk said, concerned. "What's wrong?" "I'm happy," she sobbed. "I haven't been happy in so long that I forgot what it felt like, and it hurts." He held her while she cried, this strong man who had survived hell holding this strong woman who had survived her own kind of hell. They stood together in the sunlight streaming through the windows, two broken people finding wholeness in each other. The days that followed were a revelation. Vivian discovered she loved cooking, filling the house with the smells of southern comfort food that made Tae Min Hyuk's men hover hopefully near the kitchen. She tended the garden, coaxing flowers to bloom. She read books on the terrace, her feet tucked under her, completely at peace. And Tae Min Hyuk came home to her every evening. No matter how late, no matter how difficult his day, he came home. They established a ritual, dinner together, no phones, no business. Just them. "Tell me something you loved when you were young," she asked one evening over bulgogi she had learned to make. "Music," he said. "My mother loved to sing. Before everything fell apart, she would sing while she cooked. I haven't listened to music in years." The next day, Vivian filled the house with music. Soul, jazz, old R&B. When Tae Min Hyuk came home, she was in the kitchen singing along to Etta James, swaying to the rhythm. He stood in the doorway watching her, and when she turned and saw him, she held out her hand. "Dance with me," she said. "I don't know how." "Neither do I anymore. We'll figure it out." They moved together awkwardly at first, then found their rhythm. Vivian's head rested against his chest, his arms around her, and for those few minutes, nothing else existed. Not his dangerous world, not her tragic past. Just two people swaying to music in a kitchen filled with light. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. Vivian pulled back to look at him. "I love you too. It terrifies me, but I do." He kissed her then, soft and reverent, like she was precious. Like she mattered. When they pulled apart, both were crying. "We're a mess," Vivian laughed through her tears. "We're perfect," he corrected. But perfection, Vivian would learn, always came with a price. The attack came on a Tuesday evening. Vivian was in the garden, pruning roses, when she heard the sound of cars approaching too fast. Instinct made her drop her shears and run for the house. She had just reached the door when men in masks surrounded her. She fought. God, she fought. 20 years of grief gave her a kind of fearless strength. But there were too many of them. They grabbed her, began dragging her toward their vehicle. Then gunfire erupted. Tae Min Hyuk's security team appeared, and chaos ensued. Vivian was thrown to the ground, covered her head with her arms as bullets flew overhead. She heard screaming, shouting in Korean, more gunfire. Then strong hands pulled her up, and she was looking into Tae Min Hyuk's frantic eyes. Blood spattered his shirt, but he seemed unharmed. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. "I'm okay," she managed. "I'm okay." He pulled her against him, his body shaking with relief and rage. "Get her inside," he ordered his men. "And find out who sent them. I want names. Now." The next hours were a blur. The house became a fortress. Tae Min Hyuk disappeared to handle the situation, and Vivian sat in their bedroom, still wearing her garden clothes, dirt under her nails, trying to process how quickly peace had shattered. When he returned near dawn, there was blood on his hands. Literal blood. He stood in the doorway, and Vivian saw it all on his face, the violence he had enacted, the darkness he had embraced to keep her safe. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. "It's over." "Did you kill them?" "Yes." He said it without apology, without excuse. "The men who ordered this. His entire operation. They don't exist anymore." Vivian should have been horrified. Should have run. Instead, she stood and walked to him. She took his hands, looking at the blood there. "Marcus was good," she said softly. "Kind and gentle and good. And he died holding my hand, unable to protect us from an accident that came out of nowhere." She looked up at Tae Min Hyuk. "You're dangerous. You do terrible things. But you're fighting to stay alive. You're fighting to keep me alive. And I'll take dangerous and alive over good and gone." She led him to the bathroom, washed the blood from his hands with gentle care. He stood silent, watching her face. When his hands were clean, she held them against her cheeks. "I choose you," she whispered. "I choose this. I choose us." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and Vivian kissed him back with 20 years of pent-up hunger for life, for feeling, for love. They made love that morning as the sun rose, urgent and tender, two people claiming each other completely. Afterward, lying in his arms, Vivian traced the scars on his chest. "Your world is violent." "Yes. You can't change that overnight." "No. But you're trying to be better. To build something legitimate." "I am. For you. For the future I want to have with you." Vivian kissed his shoulder. "Then I'm with you. Whatever comes, I'm with you." 6 months later, Vivian stood in their garden, watching roses bloom in the spring sunshine. She was 50 years old, living with a man 15 years younger, a man whose past was soaked in violence and whose future was uncertain. It was unconventional. It was dangerous. It was real. She heard the door open, felt his arms wrap around her from behind. She leaned back against his chest, comfortable and secure. Happy, he asked. Terrified, she admitted. But yes. Happy. Good, he whispered against her hair. Because I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way. Vivian turned in his arms to look at him. This man who had found her in darkness. This man who had reminded her that her heart still worked. This man she loved with an intensity that still surprised her. I love you, Tae Min Hyuk. I love you, Vivian Richards. They stood together in the garden, surrounded by blooming roses and spring sunshine, two survivors who had found each other and chosen to live again. Not to just exist, but to truly, fully live. And for the first time in 20 years, Vivian understood that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is open your heart one more time. Allow yourself to love one more time. Choose life one more time. She was 50 years old. She had gray hair and scars on her soul. She had buried one love and found another in the most unlikely place. And she was finally, blessedly, alive. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever found love when you least expected it? And don't forget to like this video. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more stories like Vivian's. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to love again. It's never too late to choose life.